Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by the following: IU Health Southern Indiana physicians, primary care and specialty care providers now accepting new patients in Bloomington and throughout South Central Indiana. siphysicians.org, IU Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research, working to improve cybersecurity and provide policy guidance through partnerships with industry, government, and academia.
Smithville Fiber, the Gigacity Company, fiber internet, HD, and digital IPTV in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com.
And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk. It's been a revolving door of witnesses as the prosecution laid out its case this week against the man accused of killing IU student Hannah Wilson. Plus, a new report calls the HIV outbreak in Scott County preventable. What lessons we learned and why some health officials and lawmakers accuse the state of failing to provide any resources to stop another outbreak.
I think in rural Indiana in general, there are a lot of health disparities just because of access to care.
Plus, a sport you won't see at the Olympics, but one that is certainly catching on across the U.S. Pickleball is popular, especially among seniors. Ahead, we visit an Indiana town that recently turned a tennis court into a pickleball court to accommodate the growing sport. Those stories, plus the latest news headlines from across the state, right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. The prosecution could rest its case against Daniel Messel as early as Monday. Messel is accused of the beating death of IU student Hannah Wilson. Jurors this week heard testimony from Wilson's roommates and friends and from a number of experts and investigators. WTIU's Lindsay Wright tells us what we know so far.
Joe, Hannah Wilson was 22 years old when she disappeared in the early morning hours of April 24, 2015. Friends say Wilson had just recently completed her last final exam and was set to graduate in a few weeks. Wilson went out with friends on Thursday, April 23rd, the week of Little 500. This week is often described as a party week for Indiana University students. Friends who were with Wilson that night were among the first people the prosecutor called to take the stand this week. We're going to focus on 26 hours. That was one of the prosecution's opening statements to jurors. The key elements in the case are Messel's cell phone, which was found near Wilson's body, a bag of clothes police found Messel carrying, Messel's car, and Wilson's DNA. Prosecutors call the evidence in the case credible, concise, and consistent. But the defense says police investigating didn't follow up on other evidence and didn't question any other potential suspects. Jurors heard testimony from several witnesses, including from a woman who lives near where the body was found, law enforcement officials, and friends of Wilson. They also saw photos of Wilson's injuries. The defense team attempted to block testimony concerning a murder weapon, arguing prosecutors would imply Messel's Maglite flashlight could have been the weapon used, but the judge decided to allow that testimony. Both the defense and prosecution teams are using surveillance video and expert witnesses to refute the other's evidence. The prosecution is expected to wrap its case on Monday, but the trial could last another week or so. Joe?
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. A study published in the New England Journal of Medicine says Indiana's HIV outbreak was preventable. Sarah Whitmire reports on its findings.
Health officials diagnosed more than 190 people with HIV since the outbreak started last year. Most of them live in Scott County and caught the virus from sharing needles they used to inject a powerful prescription painkiller called Opana. Part of what made the outbreak so different is it occurred in a small rural community, and the study cautions it could happen elsewhere. The circumstances underlying this HIV outbreak are not unique to this community, the study says. It points to a lack of health care, substance abuse treatment, and HIV testing as factors that contributed to the outbreak. Before the number of HIV cases in Scott County skyrocketed, there hadn't been free HIV testing offered in the community since a Planned Parenthood location closed in 2013. Indiana State Health Commissioner Jerome Adams disputes that in a statement released last week. HIV testing has been available in Scott County since well before the outbreak and has never been limited to one facility, Adams said in the statement. The unfortunate reality is that research has shown repeatedly that people with substance abuse disorder often do not seek out medical care. All the testing facilities in the world won't identify an outbreak if people don't come in.
We actually went down in our public health spending to $12.40 per capita, which is significantly lower than other states.
The study also points to syringe exchange programs as a key component in limiting future outbreaks. It says such programs can reduce the risk of an HIV outbreak by as much as 56%.
I think our syringe exchange program the legislation was set up to fail because of the lack of resources attached. And yet you have counties that have no resources working very diligently to develop this harm reduction strategy.
Until last year, syringe exchange programs were illegal in the state. Legislators passed a bill that allows counties with high rates of hepatitis C to declare a public health emergency and request state approval for a syringe exchange. These programs offer clean needles and a variety of services, including referrals to drug treatment and HIV counseling. Representative Ed Clear says while Indiana's bill was a good compromise, it's reactive.
We're waiting for something bad to happen and then reacting to it. And I think the study very clearly shows that syringe exchange should be in the toolbox for prevention, for preventing the sort of outbreak that occurred in Scott County.
So far, 5 counties have state-approved syringe exchange programs, and more are in the process of requesting them. Once a county gets the green light from the state, work begins to find funding. The state still bans funding for needle exchange programs. The study warns that although it's challenging, eliminating the funding barrier is critical to stopping the spread of HIV and preventing future outbreaks.
We know what an important role prevention plays, and we know what a lack of prevention there was in Scott County, and unfortunately what a lack of prevention there still is in most Indiana counties.
So it is a public health crisis, and we're happy that it seems that the feeling across the country is to move it from a criminal problem into a public health problem. To go back to pre-Harrison Act 1916 criminalization of drugs and start really treating it like the public health crisis it is. So it would be nice to have the dollars to be able to grapple with it.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Sarah Whitmire.
So we've got one. The opening ceremony for the Olympics are kicking off this evening. The tournament is taking place in Rio de Janeiro, and many Hoosier athletes made the trip to compete. Swimmers and divers from Indiana University and Purdue University are hoping to medal in Rio. IU is also sending swimming and diving coaches to the global competition. So joining us now is Max Morano. He's an assistant professor of environmental health science at IUPUI. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here.
We kind of wanted to talk about, well, everyone has been talking about the Zika virus, but now we say that there might be a greater threat, something new that I haven't even heard about yet, the chikungunya virus. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, chikungunya is a virus that actually has been there before. There was an outbreak in 2014 already. It's just that this outbreak, even though it was significant in Brazil and even in the Americas, in Colombia and other countries, was not as strong as this Zika outbreak, so people know less about it internationally. But the fact that it was not as strong, it means it affected less people. So there is still more people susceptible to that virus. Zika was very aggressive. It infected a greater number of people. So then it's going to be more people already immune to that virus as opposed to chikungunya.
What about the symptoms? Are they different or similar?
They are actually very similar. They both have this rash, ocular pain, like reddish eye, and then a mild headache, a mild fever. Probably the main difference is that the chikungunya it takes longer, and after the initial symptoms of the rash and the headache, it comes not always, but very often some joint pain. So people rarely is able to walk with this pain in the joint.
So would the treatment be about the same then for both two?
Yeah, there is actually no treatment, no medicine other than the normal analgesic trying to release, to attenuate the pain.
Now, are there other diseases that spectators and Olympians there should be on the lookout for?
The same mosquito that transmits Zika and chikungunya also transmit dengue. Dengue is more known, it has been for a while. But really the risk of those diseases is very low. It's very low. It's far more the fear that there is in the public perception than the real threat it represents.
So precautions very quickly that those can take to try to stay healthy?
Well, try to stay indoors in air condition. The classic wearing long stick leaf, long pants, and repellent.
Well, thank you very much for being here. Hopefully those don't overshadow the games themselves.
I don't think it will happen. Yeah.
Right. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. If you haven't heard of Pickleball yet, you will soon. We'll take you to a newly finished court in Terre Haute, and you'll understand why people say you're hooked after the first time picking up a racket. Football season is right around the corner. We visit the Hoosiers training camp as they gear up for a highly anticipated season. And Lindsay Wright joins us with news headlines. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk.
We are a nation of explorers. We seek new ways of living, of thinking, and of expressing ourselves. We take risks, we learn from experience, and we keep moving forward. That's why we encourage and celebrate the explorer in all of us.
$10,000.
15? 15, you think?
20, 21,000?
600.
20. 18 fine.
24.
It's at least 40.
Look at it.
4,500,000.
650.
20.
650.
This textile would be worth about $500,000.
$500,000?
No way.
I knew it. It's just a blanket.
Laying on the back of a chair. Well, sir, you have a national treasure.
Wow.
A national treasure. Congratulations.
I can't believe this.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. Well, we have a lot more to get to, including this week's headlines. Lindsay Wright joins us now with the latest top stories from across the state.
Thanks, Joe. The final pretrial conference for Kyle Parker was this morning in Owen County. Parker is charged with the murder, rape, and kidnapping of one-year-old Shaylin Ammerman. According to police, Parker abducted Ammerman from her crib at her grandmother's house. After a search, the baby's body was found by the White River near Gosport. Parker's jury trial was scheduled to begin next week. That's being pushed back to later this fall. Mike Pence is focusing on winning over conservatives who are skeptical of Donald Trump. Pence has been called on several times this week to do damage control after Trump made incendiary remarks. Trump feuded publicly with the family of deceased Army Captain Humayun Khan after they criticized Trump's anti-Muslim rhetoric. Trump also refused to endorse Arizona Senator John McCain and Republican House Speaker Paul Ryan. Pence responded by saying Khan's family should be cherished. He also had a meeting with McCain and publicly endorsed both McCain and Ryan. Two Indiana GOP members of Congress will find out next week whether they'll get back on the November ballot. U.S. Representatives Susan Brooks and Todd Rokita both withdrew their congressional bids in July for their unsuccessful runs to be picked as the Republican nominee for governor. That's after Mike Pence joined Donald Trump's ticket. Brooks and Rokita both want to resume their re-election campaigns after the GOP State Committee selected Lieutenant Governor Eric Holcomb as the gubernatorial candidate. Precinct committee members will vote August 13th to fill the congressional ballot vacancies. Holcomb is running with Auditor Suzanne Crouch. The GOP State Committee officially nominated Crouch this week. The Indiana Democratic Party says the GOP has gone all in on Governor Mike Pence's record in choosing Holcomb and Crouch, two people Pence put in the offices they currently hold. Holcomb has received a big infusion of campaign cash as the new Republican gubernatorial candidate. A state disclosure report filed this week shows Pence's state campaign gave nearly $1.25 million to Holcomb. Holcomb expected a boost from Pence's $7 million campaign fund, but transferring that money has been complicated by federal rules that now apply to Pence since he is Donald Trump's vice presidential nominee. Democratic candidate John Gregg had about $5.8 million in campaign money at the end of June. Farmland values in Indiana are continuing to decline. New numbers show the average decline is between 8.2 and 8.7%. That's the largest drop since the mid-'80s. Over the past 2 years, the average farmland value has fallen about 13%. The report cites low commodity prices as the cause. Representatives from various industries across Indiana are calling on Congress to reform the nation's immigration system. A report released by the Reason for Reform campaign shows immigrants living in the state earned more than $8 billion in 2014 and paid more than $2 billion in taxes. Indiana state senators have been studying immigration issues for months. Some officials argue reform must happen at the federal level. City leaders in Bloomington, Carmel, Columbus, and Indianapolis have just a little more than a week to prepare for oral arguments in the case of city anti-LGBT discrimination ordinances. The lawsuit filed in January by the Indiana Family Institute, Indiana Family Action, and the American Family Association of Indiana alleges extending those protections locally not only violates the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, but also constitutional rights of freedom of religion.
We think it was the right thing to do when we did it. It was unanimously passed by a Republican city council, which is surprising to some folks. But yeah, we intend to defend this and look forward to the opportunity to do so.
The suit claims the local ordinances discriminate against religious organizations that have a, quote, biblical view of marriage and human sexuality. A bipartisan group of state senators backed by law enforcement organizations wants to create tougher penalties for criminals who target off-duty public safety officials. An Indianapolis man last month fired shots into a police officer's car and home. In the wake of that incident, Senator Jim Merritt wants to pass a bill that would enhance criminal penalties for anyone who targets officers.
This recent cavalcade of bullets that went into a person's house who is a part of law enforcement, 17 bullets, is indicative that we need to protect our finest in a lot better way, in a lot more safe way.
A House lawmaker recently proposed a measure that would create a new felony criminalizing threats against law enforcement. The DNR and a developer who plans to refurbish a pavilion at Indiana Dunes State Park say an order by the National Park Service to stop work on the project is temporary and it isn't expected to delay its planned opening next May. Pavilion Partners wants to bring a restaurant, a rooftop bar, and a banquet center to the site along Lake Michigan. National Park Service and DNR officials say the issue is how the pavilion will be classified. Members of Dune Action, a group that opposes alcohol at the park, are hopeful the National Park Service will stop the project. However, Park Service officials say they don't have the authority. Ticket sales are up 14% in the year since the Hoosier State passenger train from Indianapolis to Chicago changed ownership. That's despite a 12% decline in the number of passengers. This week was the first anniversary of the line's 3-year partnership among Amtrak, Iowa Pacific Holdings, the Indiana Department of Transportation, and cities along the route. The new owners upgraded the line with Wi-Fi and remodeled train cars. The Indiana football team is eager to begin a new season after making its first bowl appearance since 2007. Joe Wren reports from the start of preseason camp.
It was no pads, helmets only on the practice fields outside of Memorial Stadium Wednesday afternoon. Stretching, walkthroughs, and getting loose is the routine these first two practices. Head coach Kevin Wilson begins his 6th season at Indiana, looking to build off the Pinstripe Bowl loss.
We'll be playing a lot of guys early in camp because, quite honestly, some of the running volume and contact volume can wear you out come November.
5 Hoosiers will vie to play quarterback after the departure of veteran Nate Sudfeld. Wilson says junior Xander Diamant and junior college transfer Richard Lago will be frequent camp starters.
Maybe we need to play more than one. You can sit here and criticize whether you should or shouldn't. Sometimes you need to bring a guy over and calm him down, sit him down a little bit, let him view it over there. I don't know. Well, it's going to play out.
The Hoosiers begin the season at Florida International on Thursday, September 1st.
And we're closer than ever to finding the USS Indianapolis. A historian has discovered a previously unknown data point on USS Indianapolis's route on its final day. It puts the ship 25 miles further along its route than originally thought. The ship was sunk by a Japanese submarine days after delivering components for an atomic bomb during World War II. And Joe, undersea explorer Kurt Newport and the Discovery Channel conducted the last search in the early 2000s.
Something we'll have to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lindsay. While many are turning their attention to the Olympics and the upcoming football season, there's another game that's attracting players and spectators in Terre Haute. Kevin Hyland reports on what impacts pickleball is having on and off the court.
Sometimes I've been able to serve and get it over there and it'll, shoot to one side.
This is Rex Lawler, who is affectionately referred to by some as one of the founding fathers of pickleball in Terre Haute.
I should have wore my ambassador shirt. I had it in the car.
Pickleball is basically tennis, played with a wooden paddle and a wiffle ball. The game moves a little slower. The court is a third of the size and serves are always underhand. Lawler's love affair with the sport began when he was introduced to it a number of years ago at a racquetball tournament.
One of the wives of one of the racquetball players was playing pickleball, and we finally went out to check into it to see what it was, and finally got a chance to give it a try, and I thought, man, that is a fun game.
And like that, Lawler was hooked. When he got back home, he introduced his friends to the game, and it took off. Terre Haute has been coined the pickleball mecca of the Midwest. Nothing illustrates that better than a brand new court, built specifically for the sport.
You couldn't have played tennis here if you wanted to. So we actually made a proposal to the park board to redo this facility and turn it into a pickleball facility.
The courts at Brittlebank Park were patched up, received new coats of paint, and were given proper pickleball dimensions. Adler now proudly calls it one of the best facilities in the Midwest. According to members of the Terre Haute group, it's the fastest growing sport in America. There are 13,000 courts around the country. Demographically, slightly more men play than women. It's a 54-46 split. And the sport is booming among seniors. 68% of players are 60 years or older.
Probably its growth started in the senior market and came backwards, which is different than most sports which start in the junior market and go forth like soccer. Pickleball is kind of taking that reverse trend with seniors kind of leading the popularity way.
Most people that have played tennis, they'll catch on pretty quick.
Cothran says a major reason for this unusual trend is that pickleball, like golf, is a lifelong game.
But what we want is not what's the maximum benefit, but what's something you'll actually do. And if you'll actually do pickleball, what we know is 30 minutes incrementally. It's not even 30 continuous minutes. 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, and you're going to see amazing health benefits.
But perhaps the biggest benefit of pickleball may be the social aspect. It gets players out of the house.
Some studies show that the biggest indicator of quality and length of life aren't physiological measurements, they're social measurements.
It's kind of been like a big party. We even have one guy that comes out here in the summertime at the evenings, and he'll make ice cream and bring drinks and things, and everybody just has a good time.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Kevin Highland.
And the 2016 Indiana State Fair is underway. Opening ceremonies were this morning. Officials say they expect attendance to be on track with previous years, around 900,000. The biggest change this year is happening digitally. A new smartphone app for Apple and Android devices will help fairgoers find their favorite food vendors, animal competitions, and even their own car.
Gives you a personalized itinerary so you can schedule that, share it with your friends. I think the coolest thing is going to be able to drop a pin where you park so you don't get lost.
This year, more of the Coliseum is devoted to livestock, which means more room for animals in their pens. Officials do say the weather outlook for the next 2.5 weeks looks good, and if things get too hot, as always, visitors can retreat to some of the fair's indoor attractions. And it's the state's bicentennial, so you can expect to find many exhibits and even food that tie into that theme. That's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by the following: IU Health Southern Indiana physicians, primary care and specialty care providers now accepting new patients in Bloomington and throughout South Central Indiana. SIphysicians.org, IU Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research, working to improve cybersecurity and provide policy guidance through partnerships with industry, government, and academia.
Smithville Fiber, the Gigacity Company, fiber internet, HD, and digital IPTV in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com.
And by WTIU members. Thank you.